Okay, I think the numbers have stabilized. So if I provide a brief introduction and I'll hand over to colleagues. So this is the second of our um, quick sessions on the consultation process with Devon County Council. The first session we did yesterday, a recording is available of that session. That session focused on the new fee model, the uplift and the value in care report. And today's session is going to focus on service descriptors, the delights of a new contract, KPIs, and service specification. So lots of new stuff all in one go. So we're trying to get off and running with these proposals as quickly as possible. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to my friend Treen.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Apologies if you were here yesterday and today. That means you're having to listen to me 2 days in a row. But that's Robin's fault, not mine. We set these two sessions up last week in order to hear views of everyone about the proposal. But having reflected with Robin this morning, it appears that many members are communicating with us that there's actually quite a lot of information here and they haven't had the time to digest it. We reflected this morning that we've been very privileged to have been involved in this process for some months and actively try to challenge some of this in the Care Home Forum, but appreciate that there is a lot of information here. And we also have a number of members that have a singular home that may not have been involved in commissioning frameworks or contract engagement before. Robin and I definitely have had that experience in different counties, and so we've been privileged to be able to argue with the state for over 20 years. Not that we've got very far, I don't think, but at least we do try every year. The documents that we have had include if I just recap on the documents that have come out from the state, there was a document called the Older Persons Fee Model Engagement Report. That report is the summary document that describes the state's position. So I'm going to just share that on the screen so that people can familiarize themselves with the document in case you do what my team do and kill lots of trees and print everything. This provider engagement document should give you a summary of the position, and this document is Devon attempting to summarize the different documents that have been released as part of the engagement and describe the application of the model. If we were to follow this down in the way that they have released it so that we are on the same page, we did reflect with representatives from Devon County Council that they are experienced commissioners with procurement background and therefore would understand what they have released. I did not understand these documents when I first read them when they came out last week and had to seek advice from Robin and other professionals on how these documents are structured. With that experience of mine from last week, it may be beneficial for us to go through some of this on this call. Please actively use the chat bar if there are things that I'm saying that are not making sense, or if I'm teaching my grandmother how to suck eggs, because we're very unsure as to how to pitch this approach. The document reminds us that the current model for funding care in our county is the resource allocation system, the personalised fee model. This fee model was introduced to move away from a banding system, which was felt did not reflect the needs of individuals in care homes. So I should step back and say that the aim of this session is to present information in the way that we have read it, so that you are able to go away and consider the information through that same lens. in order that we can collaborate together to produce a common generic response as the care association, which means that when I'm trying to go through this, please feel free to interrupt if it doesn't make sense. Feel free to put your comments in the chat bar so that we can incorporate those in the joint response. We have a number of administrators on the call today, both humans and AI, so we are well resourced to hear all of your comments and capture all of them. The personalized fee model that was introduced was to move us away from a banding system which it was felt did not commission services in a way where they could produce outstanding outcomes. So it's clear that the move back to a banding system is an about turn. And that's something that I think we should be actively commenting on in our observations to remind individuals of how the resource allocation system works. It occurred to me in the middle of the night with another insomniac night that many people may not have understood how the resource allocation system works because Devon did not release these questions when the model was released. We were privileged enough to have picked up this set of questions from a printer many years ago, so I thought I might share them with you. These questions are answered in the electronic resource allocation system, which was a proprietary piece of software that was purchased by the county that would deliver us a number of hours of the care package. This document will be made available on the DCHC website in a resources section. The admin team have kindly agreed to create a web page and post a number of the documents that we are circulating. These questions, when ticked in the background, produced a number of hours, and if we did not agree with those hours, there was the option or escalation pathway within Devon to challenge the number of hours on the RAS. The RAS would have gone to a RAS champion. RAS champion would have checked those answers, and if there was evidence in the care records of additional time intervention, there was the ability to put targeted support, i.e. additional hours, on top of the Devon fee. If the Devon fee was still not accepted by the provider, then the individual case would be, horrible words, not mine, put out for tender, like a piece of meat. And that put out for tender would mean the market would be tested for other fees. If the RAS plus targeted support could not procure care in another care setting, then the existing provider was offered market premium, i.e. a premium because it's a premium over and above the assessed hours. What has been happening in that is important because it is important to understand how your existing fee is made up. The existing fee is made up from that RAS assessment. That RAS assessment is a set of questions answered based on the information gathered in the Care Act assessment, which should include your notes. Now, whether that Care Act assessment does or not is a question that should be considered case by case. It is our experience that our notes, i.e. Evolve's notes, were often not considered in professional assessments, and therefore the Care Act assessment was incomplete and inaccurate, resulting in an inaccurate RAS. And we found that when challenging RASs. Why is this important to reverse engineer that process? Taking your existing fees, understanding the number of RAS hours, referring back to the Care Act assessment that was authored to achieve those RAS hours will enable you as a provider to consider that Care Act assessment against the residential descriptors. I'm sticking to residential because I had a couple of comments yesterday that I moved on to nursing. I am a nursing provider, so I'm very excited about the nursing model, and I think it doesn't work, but we'll stick with residential first. So person by person, it would be beneficial for providers to consider the existing position first through the Care Act assessment, and then compare that to residential needs, low, medium, and high. And that would be a way of achieving your view of the banding position. Is that, if I can pause there, is that clear? Robin, please help me out if I'm, make sure I'm not confusing stuff, right?
All but the last step, Shrin.
All but the last step. Let me say that. Is that Stephen? Hi.
Yeah, hiya, hi.
Hi.
Just in
Tell me
terms
what I
of when
said
you're
was the last
describing how you're doing the assessment on going backwards with existing residents and assessing the low, medium, high.
So if you took the Care Act assessment for the individual and broke down the needs in the social worker's language, you should find that you can break down the comments into the service categories, i.e. hygiene, eating and drinking, continence, skin integrity. You can then match the needs as established on the Care Act assessment into the boxes low, medium or high. So for example, in low needs, I like to wash, bathe and dress myself as much as I can to maintain my independence. I should be able to match whether the individual can wash themselves if they need support twice a day or they need 2 members of staff to support. I should be able to pick that from the Care Act assessment and tick a box. We are suggesting, and again, I'm just going to keep repeating this because I'm a little bit nervous about this is not our model as DCHC, definitely not an Evolve's model, definitely not our preference about how to assess individuals. It's a model that the local authority have developed and we are being consulted on as a marketplace. And so we are being asked to test this model and respond with consultation under the consultation. I don't believe that any of us can respond unless we have tested it ourselves. All of the work that I'm going to present here today is Eve Carter's work. I am nothing but performing seal in public, and I just present the work of my team behind the scenes. Eve is on the call assessing my delivery ability right now. We take in Evolve those building blocks, so an anonymized spreadsheet of a from one of our services. Those building blocks that have been put into the service descriptors, we have taken the needs from our plans. And when I say we, I mean my clinical governance lead, Eve, and each service manager have sat together and painstakingly gone through each individual they support and allocated one of standard, advanced, or exceptional into those needs. Now it's a nursing service and therefore we've gone standard or advanced. Obviously it's residential, your options would be low, medium, high.
We have put some residential placements in here to be able to share today. Yeah.
Okay, so low, medium, residential, thank you. So the concept is taking the existing assessment and translating that into the service descriptor model is one that we are going to have to get good at if we're going to argue for the right fee for our services. So we might as well start now. In completing that exercise, a couple of things have come to light. I'm going to show you this. So these are the service categories in accordance with the Devon County Council proposal and letter of engagement. Those service categories seem to be aimed at residential care, which is appropriate because they're the local authority and that's what they procure. When we consider nursing categories, there are 4 categories that are identified as emissions, which should be considered. Now, arguably, pain management should be considered for someone whether they're residential or nursing because it requires time. So I'm not saying that I agree with this model. I'm going to repeat, I actively do not agree with it professionally. I don't think it's all encompassing. However, I do believe, having looked at this and applied this in Evolve, that it has some mileage and therefore should be worked with if a personalized model is not available. So by building upon the service categories and adding in those categories that are missing, we should be able to develop a picture of the individual. By then individually allocating for nursing or residential the status of each of those service categories, we should be able to develop a picture of whether the individual requires which banding level the individual would be able to fit in and whether bespoke pricing can be applied. I stress that we are still in testing stage and we are very early door sharing. The reason for sharing is that Robin twisted my arm behind my back and said, can you please share the work? I'm very happy to share. I'm very privileged that I have a very, very long-standing, very intelligent team that can develop all of this. And I'm very conscious there are other providers that may not have that. We're happy to be able to share as we iterate, but our current thinking is for a residential case, if there are 2 or more individual service categories that are marked as exceptional, that would equate to bespoke pricing. What does marked as exceptional mean? You might ask, and if my computer plays ball, I will be able to tell you. I refer you back to the descriptor model as released by Devon County Council, and you can see that there are 3 categories with the service categories with the 3 levels: low, medium and high. They've done a good job of describing needs in each category at a high level. So if you're able to match someone into low, medium and high by each individual category, the overall picture should then tell you whether they fit in that band. Because there are no instructions in the proposal about how many service categories would have to be exceptional, we're unable to, this is all guesswork. To me, exceptional means where high needs, where the individual's needs are over and above the description in the high needs column. It is perfectly possible in the real world that your eating and drinking needs may be exceptional, but your continence needs may be low. Robin.
And just to sort of draw out a little bit here, if, for example, we would go away and map our current clients into these descriptors. Say we went through and we found for a residential person, they have 3 or 4 medium needs, 1 low need and a couple of high needs. Where would that person fall overall?
No, we were talking about that earlier, that it feels as though we're on track in developing a matrix, just like within the CHC framework. And I think that's that's sort of like the next part that is in our thoughts at the minute, that the more data that we gather, I mean, obviously, we've spent sort of the last week gathering this for nearly 140 people. So now it's taking that and then actually looking at using the CHC words, looking at the severity of that need depending in which service category it's in. So I think the matrix is the next step as to what does that look like. See, I have the CHC framework in my head where it's blocked out. And I'm hoping that sort of by the end of the week, so I'm going to go back, we're going to work again sort of individually I'm going to work with the managers again this week, and that's the next bit.
Right. Thank you.
So to describe that document that you just saw has been transposed into an Excel document that will show us by service category. We have taken out low, we probably need to add that back in, but medium, high, nursing standard, nursing advanced. Those are the bands that have been released in this proposal. That has led us, therefore, to create a description of what we believe is exceptional. That exceptional description has come from the 100+ assessments that have been done in the last couple of weeks. So in attempting to match everyone to a band that is within an Evolve home, we have taken the care plans and needs assessments and running record and individual key workers' opinion of that individual and taken descriptions of where the needs would be defined as exceptional. That enables us to create a system as to how we manage and measure those needs in order that we can describe them on the day of any assessment. That process will be different for nursing and residential people and will create some confusion. So if I can jump on to nursing individuals, if I look at eating and drinking, the Devon County Council Advanced Nursing Descriptor refers to physical restrictions, risk of choking, the need to follow a SALT plan, and my nutritional needs may be met using enteral feeding. If I can start with my first concern and my little bone or dog with a bone that I keep barking about every meeting that I go to, it seriously concerns me as a social care professional that should have regard for the social care budget, which they keep saying is not big enough, that the residential high descriptors describe my nutritional needs may be met using enteral feeding, which will be a delegated task from community nurses. If we as residential providers are accepting delegated health tasks and we are using social care to pay for the delivery of those, then that is simply wrong. Now, it may be correct and appropriate to provide a learning opportunity for the individuals involved, but from a funding perspective, the local authority is paying care staff to complete delegated health tasks, of which the NHS therefore is not directly contributing. That may result in a challenge, principally if social care staff in our residential settings are doing more than they should, but we're unable to extract that, and that become exceptional funding. So in that funding band, they appear to have paid for delegated health tasks, which would be over and above the local authority limit. That may be a question, Robin, that I think we do need to consider robustly about their expectations, because they're setting up a framework to actually promote health delivery in social care. Yep. Where we consider the advanced descriptor, we have veered into the world of diabetes and therefore the world of health funding. So when we consider our approach to funding, can you guys see that? Is that legible on screen?
Sure, it might be better on the spreadsheet. It's on there as well under the tab of review needs. Maybe clear on there.
Okay.
It's worth pointing out, Sharon, as well on the exceptional descriptors, when you go back to that, the text that applies to social care with regards to minutes and activities or management that can be delivered by non-health staff is in blue, just to distinguish between health and social care needs in the exceptional banding.
So if we extrapolate that personal care and dressing, personal care lines in blue versus the line that I'm referring to with the diabetes management in eating and drinking.
In black.
Yeah. The management of individuals that are dysphasic has become somewhat blurred, with risk of aspiration generally having been a risk that's managed in a nursing setting. I appreciate that that risk seems to be managed well in residential settings, with community nurses managing that individual where there is a predictable level of risk. I've personally failed to understand how suction machines are on when they're not used in residential settings for managing risk of aspiration, but that may be my lack of knowledge. But we are describing exceptional needs in order that we're able to start defining why we think someone is exceptional. So if individuals with a nursing funding application, i.e. an FNC, already in place, are then considered to go through a funding pathway, this proposal would suggest that you go from standard nursing to advanced nursing to bespoke pricing. That is the way that I have read it, and I hope that I'm not wrong. My personal opinion of the legislation is that if you are unable to be met within advanced nursing and you have needs that are identified over and above the local authority upper band, i.e. you cannot be met in eating and drinking in your nursing advanced descriptor for eating and drinking, we move to an exceptional description, then we must consider whether the exception or the need that cannot be met within that level of funding, within that description, is that a social care need or is it a health need? If it is a health need, then I am proposing robustly that those should be CHC referrals. A CHC referral should be used to consider through the DST whether eligibility can be agreed or not. Now, the likelihood is that it cannot, because you're marginally above in your health need the FNC criteria, and FNC criteria will be applied, and they'll say it's a balance or an average of nursing individuals living in a nursing home. I do not agree. Anyone who is over and above the FNC limit that breaches into CHC may not meet CHC criteria with the number of domains that they score in. However, in that particular domain, their health needs will be over and above the FNC limit. Therefore, CHC eligibility will not be met. The next step down is joint funding. This process was in place in the county in 2019. The joint funding document was updated in 2021. I circulated the joint funding policy on the WhatsApp group a couple of days ago. I will just, to refresh people's minds, post the policy here. Where's it gone? My screen is jumping around. This document, being 28 pages long, will describe funding arrangements where CHC is not met, but the individual is over and above the F&C limit. So that tells us that there is a process in place. This process exists in many other counties. Joint funding arrangements should be agreed within 5 working days of the verification of not eligible for CHC. The document goes on to say that funding should be agreed at 50-50. Really important that we have that as a set of nursing homes, we are cognizant of that. We don't want nursing individuals to be taking funding from the social care pot because it reduces the amount of money available for residential providers. So if joint funding is not agreed, we then fall to a bespoke pricing model. If the needs as identified by us by our assessments are over and above the advanced nursing, but when we identify those needs, we believe them to be social care needs, then we should be able to go straight to the social care bespoke pricing model to reflect the care time, i.e. something that isn't complex diabetic management requiring nursing oversight. So the time is for the care staff, not for the health staff. For nursing homes, we need to consider together whether nurses, TNAs and CPs are now all regarded as health staff. Traditionally, the FNC pays for the nurse, but many nursing homes are now having nursing staff supported by trained nurse associates or by care practitioners or by enhanced carers, whatever the label is that people are giving that role is generally looking at individuals' health needs and therefore as a health role, not a social care role. For residential providers, the review of needs takes them through low, medium and high, and then to bespoke pricing. It's important that we refer back to the RAS and the number of hours that we started with, the Care Act assessment that was the articulation of those hours, i.e. the needs that resulted in those hours being required, map those needs back to the residential descriptors. If the needs are over and above the descriptors, then bespoke pricing may apply. Bespoke pricing, it's suggesting, is at an accommodation rate plus a number of hours at £19.06 is my reading of the funding model. In the call yesterday, people were suggesting that the number of hours would just be calculated at £19. Our understanding is that that is not the application of this model. It is in the articulation of why the needs are over and above the standard descriptor. So for residential description, if we have residential high and an individual has multiple episodes of incontinence daily requiring support from 1 or 2 staff, to describe in a care plan that the needs are over and above that position is one thing. To evidence through the running record that the needs are being met is the secondary pillar of evidence that will be required. In my experience, in my own organisation, that is where we fail. So having risk assessments and care plans that identify the need must be substantiated and validated by a running record. Now, whether that's a continence chart, a pad change chart, the written running record, each care home will have their own way of recording those. Each care home will have their own language that is used and considered person-centered. What we can see is that if the evidence is not there, then it will be challenged. The contractual framework for challenge is not in our favour, in my opinion. So we come back to the arguments of yesterday. In the current pre-placement agreement, we have the options of D8 and D9. I would encourage you to read the pre-placement agreement. I'm putting up a blank version on screen so that individuals can see the document I'm referring to. Apologies, it's a colour scan. My office seemed to like printing everything out in colour. They forgot that trees cost money. But we have in the description of service, which is the contract section that I would encourage all members to read. We can see in D8, we have the section on review of an individual service user. Just in case you guys are not as familiar with this document as perhaps I am, I will just put that up there for you guys to be able to read. That is the section under which we can request a review. You'll note that there is no time frame in here, or in fact onus upon the service purchaser to agree with the service provider's assessment. And if the service purchaser does not agree, then the service provider has no legal power. You'll be familiar with the position that we find ourselves in, that if we identify additional needs for a service user in our care, we are obliged under the Health and Social Care Act to meet that identified need the moment we write it down. When we write it down, if meeting that need requires additional staff time, we will invariably have to put that on. We then wait between 3 and 9 months for an assessment. We then have a debate with them about the assessment. They don't agree and we don't get our funding backdated. We've then lost money because we've done the right thing and put the staff on. Please, could you tell me if you've had that experience in the chat bar? Is it your experience that reviews have been done on time and your funding backdated, or is it your experience that reviews are delayed? It's an important aspect that we need to, as the Care Association, we must reflect on in our response. It is never on time, never backdated. Okay, so the legal advice that we have taken in order to protect the position, and I'll remind people from yesterday's call, the reason we have taken the legal advice is that this new proposal is not due to go live until June. thanks to the UK government, our costs increase from the start of April. So we are not in a position where the contractual engagement process this year guarantees us to cover our costs. In my view, that leaves us exposed to not completing our direction of fiduciary responsibilities appropriately in ensuring the viability of businesses, because there's too much uncertainty. We have therefore explored with RWK Goodman on behalf of the Care Association the possibility of using D9.2 using 4 weeks notice to terminate the existing contract. Obviously that's not ideal and is not a preferred route, and would maybe be saved for where there is a significant disparity between delivery and funding. But there is a contractual route that could be used to terminate the contract and apply your rate from day 29. The recent ruling at the case in Oxfordshire implies that the care provider should be paid the reasonable rate required to deliver the care as identified. I know we're still waiting for the whole case to be played out, but the initial ruling that has been received would indicate that that is the interpretation of the Care Act. So that would be in our favour. The service specification that we would encourage you to go back and read is then to consider the change in position in this specification compared to the bank pre-placement agreement, and whether you believe that service specification to be fair and equitable and to enable your business to run in a financially viable manner. Things like the reduction of hospital discharge contract. If the individual is discharged from hospital to your care home, if they are readmitted to hospital, then the contract terminates within 48 hours. Now, I remain unclear as to why that is in a local authority contract, because local authority discharges or discharges from hospital are NHS funded for the first 4 weeks. My understanding, Robin, is that the local authority is responsible for Pathway 3 commissioning, which is why it is in this document and they're unable to remove it. But that presents us with a conundrum when responding to this engagement process as to how we respond. I'm going to jump to KPIs and then hand back to Eve for questions on the service descriptor, if that's okay. I'm going to put these up there. Before I comment on them, does anyone have any comments they'd like to put in the chat bar about these KPIs? Or would anyone like to, brave enough to turn your mic on to comment on them?
So I'll start the discussion.
Thank you.
To me, all of the KPIs are one directional. There's no KPI on review performance by commissioners, for example.
So you're saying it's not a partnership?
Exactly.
Quality document. That's an interesting perspective. We should raise that. Yeah. Is there anyone else that's read these and has any concerns or likes them, or Sally?
Yeah, I've read them. I think I agree with Robin that they are one way, and I think they'll lead to boxes just being ticked. I don't know what validity they'll stand for. I don't like the acceptance of service descriptors, so that means, do you get a black mark against you if you don't accept the rates for the service descriptors? And I feel it's going to create an issue if you don't comply. And I'm not sure who's paying for us to do these data collections. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Does anyone else have any comments that we could collect for our response?
So just to make a
Hi.
comment, just it goes across everything you've been saying. all of these things would be far, they might be better. I'm not saying they're ideal. If you actually had a relationship of trust and integrity, and the problem is that we have such a track record, a history of people saying black is white. We have an additional level of complexity that we won't even agree on a case by cases on a set of circumstances. So I kind of think that it's fraught more with it's just trying to complicate matters. And if there were trust and people were genuine and actually intended to get it right, as opposed to cut costs and make life difficult, then I could maybe be more enthused. But I just, listening to what you're saying, reading what I've read, and just thinking this will not work in such a mistrustful environment. I could use other words which would probably be stronger, but I wouldn't be very polite. So I just leave that there. But that's my gut instinct.
That's a fair comment about the trust, Robin.
So for me, a big piece that's missing around the KPIs is the desired outcomes and consequences of these.
Yeah.
And it's to me, it's just not defined at the moment. And the nervousness that it is box ticking. We're aware that commissioners are getting inspected by the CQC and need to demonstrate they have a system in place with which to measure performance of providers. And so this may be a box ticking approach to fulfill that obligation. Thank you.
I think for me, can I say, Sharon, about the cultural aspect of these? A number of them it's not even achievable. Any service that says that there is not there's not a single medication error. It's not that they've set a bar that just points everything that places will be forced back down a closed culture route, because actually if they're open, honest and transparent, where's the learning from events? Where's the shared learning and understanding? It's not realistic, and we're sort of very clear that sort of develop our own set of KPIs to go alongside this around, falls, incidents, accidents, nutritional outcomes for people, the level of community engagement that's achieved, the number of hospital admissions that are prevented through preventative work, which social care and health in ASC should be. So it almost needs another set to run alongside that meets the SAF outcomes of CQC and actually shows why this doesn't work.
This one for me is the largest culturally offensive, that as a provider that trusts my managers implicitly, I don't want to create a scenario where they are incentivized to hide complaints.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Sorry about a closed culture.
Yeah, if someone's unhappy, they should be able to complain openly and loudly, and we should be able to respond to that. Creating a commissioning framework that incentivizes people to hide concerns is not how our sector works.
It doesn't reflect working with humans.
Can I just make a sort of sorry, Eve.
Yep.
I was just going to launch into a kind of sort of, this might be a random comment, but I'll tell you what I'm thinking and feeling. A lot of the service descriptors around the mechanics of care, not things that I think are really important to us. The softer elements, the emotive elements. If you build a service that is probably inherently more expensive, but your ambition is to serve people better and meet people's emotional, spiritual, holistic needs, blah, 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 blah. The problem then might become that you have less evidence of the elements that become a feature in the box ticking of the service descriptors. Does anybody agree with that, or am I kind of being a bit sort of
you would
generous
be going down the managed needs argument there, which actually, Eve, do you want to explain your national framework paragraph 164?
Do you want to put it up? So I don't misquote them. I need to find it.
So it's part of our work, and a part that we weren't going to share today, but Jeffrey, seeing as you've raised it, we should start to look at this.
Thank you.
National Framework for Consumer Healthcare and NHS funded nursing care. So we weren't going to share it because I was told yesterday that it was all very nursing centric. So unclear how this would apply to the residential framework.
I think it does apply to the residential framework. I think we can very easily take this and take the health outcome out.
If I was a commissioner, there is nothing requiring me to refer to the health framework. So we have to make sure that when we put this back into consultation, that we do so cleverly. But the reality is what Jeffrey just said, that an individual who feels settled, who feels safe, who's comfortable, who feels included and they belong, are less likely to display the expressive behaviours that may have resulted in a need. As the behaviours are not there, the funding for managing those behaviours was removed, but the funding to support psychological safety is not recognised. Without the psychological safety, the behaviours then re-arise. The managed need argument is not there. And when we try to express that in funding assessments, it is unusual to have a professional in the MDT that puts any weight on the managed need argument. As part of this consultation, developing an SOP for how assessments are done is something that we have muted, and the commissioners have said that they would support. Bear in mind, it's not commissioners that need to develop an SOP, a standard operating procedure. It's the operations department. Operations department and the commissioning department are two separate teams, and we often get stuck in the valley between them. Is that diplomatic enough for you, Robin? Because I was told I wasn't allowed to be too, cutting, critical, and rude on this public call.
Just to chuck into the mix that, I mean, there's some new Care Act guidance for local authorities followed from, I think it's from September. It's about 300 odd pages from memory, and I haven't read it yet. And I asked Mei Ling about it, and she said, to be honest, I haven't read it either. And it's in microtype, so it'll take your mother Sundays to read it. But even in the previous guidance, and as in the Stoke judgment, there is a clear requirement on the part of local authorities to support a thriving, innovative, sustainable care sector that provides adopts more modern models of care to achieve better outcomes for people. So that's what the guidance says. The guidance comes up in a judicial review. As we all know, and you just articulated, when it comes to the crunch, that's battered off into the long grass. So I think there is a need to make those points in our responses.
And it's about how we present those needs as well. I think it's about making sure that we take the right steps in a planned approach to present when we know we have reviews come in. But actually, I think we put some points down here. In terms of that we need to demonstrate that there's clear consideration, that that the needs will resurface again, and actually have that evidence, the use of near miss events, the feelings, Jeffrey, just like you sort of talked about, and actually develop a managed need care plan that brings that together, and having that period of intense care notes and oversight prior to an assessment, as the CHC framework states. I've never yet met a CHC assessor that says, please provide me with 2 weeks intense notes prior to the CHC review that's coming up. So, I do think we can turn that into, take the health element out. But yeah, Shireen, as you said, there's no guidance necessarily on that. Although I haven't read, Jeffrey, what you've just referenced either. So I will make a note and do that.
Well, I got it printed on my desk, and I burnt a few more trees down. And I've
free.
I did because I actually
saving.
I know trees. Sorry about that, but I just got to have it in my hand to make sense of it, and it's going to be a marathon job. But if anyone wants to get there before me, great. Let me know. Praise it.
So that's Eve. Have you got anything to add on the descriptors, or?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Am I right in thinking? Sorry, Shireen. Just as it strikes me in a way that the descriptors, if you take them in the round, are almost creating a perverse incentive rather than to do a great job to be anticipative and preventative. Does anyone agree with that, or am I sort of being naive in saying that?
What do the group think?
What do you, Jeffrey, say that again? Sorry.
So I think the whole the driver of the descriptors is almost enabling you to be rewarded for deterioration, but it's not enabling, and not there's no incentive for anticipative care, preventative care, preventative. So as I was speaking earlier, so it seems like it's more likely to incentivize you or reimburse you if it's going wrong, but not if it's going right. But that probably feeds into what I said earlier.
Yeah, and that's back to the managing need discussion. Yeah.
So
I think that's where we can use the exceptional banding to look at preventative care and support and have the evidence to support that.
So we've come with some information about how we are trying to apply this. I just want to bring everyone back to the disclaimers that we are putting out here. This is all of our piloted testing work. We don't know that any of this is correct because we've had the same documents as you. The actions that we were hoping for our members to complete that we went through yesterday were to consider the service descriptors against your existing service users and band them, consider your service costs from April and reverse engineer if your costs will be met by an average level of fee under this proposal. If you feel that the costs of your service cannot be met or will not be met by this proposal, then that's something we are actively wanting to represent on your behalf and would encourage you to communicate directly to the commissioners, because we want to ensure that our sector is safe. To refer back to how they have calculated the cost, the funding for placements, they have the fair price of care rates as at September 2024, where they seem to believe that service management across residential and nursing homes is the same, and that care staff in a nursing advanced service are cheaper than a residential high service. That is so stark to me that the price of care staff for nursing advanced with high dependency is cheaper than residential high, and that nursing and residential service management is the same cost. If that does not reflect a complete misunderstanding of this sector and market, then I don't know what does. Those two data points do not give me any confidence that this funding proposal enables us to keep our service users and staff safe through the next financial year. If I'm wrong, I am wrong, but that is my opinion.
I don't think you're wrong. Can I just chuck in a comment? So just put to one side the fact that the increase in the NLW and ENI are significantly more than the cash that we're likely to generate. So that is a problem in terms of how we survive in any event. On my calculations, on the majority of DCC funded residents, I anticipate we're seeing between a 20 and 25% reduction in our fees. And we're already wondering actually how can we actually survive the year. I dare say we will, because we've had the same conversation in our heads every time the NMW has gone up, and Devon County Council may or may not be able to afford to cover up to help cover that. And so we can look at our self-funders and feel bad about it, etc., etc. So we have this conundrum every year. It just actually happens to feel significantly worse this year by a factor of, I don't know what, 2 or 3, and then on the top of that, to see a chip of significant proportions of our fee structure, well, we won't be around too long if that happens. So I kind of think it's anyway. Sorry.
Okay, so the final thing I wanted to leave with was a reminder of yesterday. Again, sorry for the nursing providers, that FNC paid per placement in a nursing home. If you run a 40-bed home on the assumption that you have 40 FNCs coming in all year round with no voids, your income from FNC will be 491,000. On the assumption that you have 2 nurses during the day, a 1:20 ratio, as recommended by the RCN ratio, or the RCN staffing, document. I think they actually say 1 to 16, but let's just call it 1 to 20 for friends. And you have one night nurse on, and your nurses take holiday, you train them at 40 hours a year each, and you have a manager as an RGN, and you have a deputy manager who is supernumerary in order to meet all of the demands of the system, then your income is now a loss of £42,000 on health for you to deliver staff. If your staff were to decide that you now need to have one CP or trained nurse associate supporting your nurse, you've now lost £121,000. If you say, I'm really sorry, I can't afford that, but you were to somehow only achieve an occupancy of 33 on average across the year, you've lost £128,000 on nursing. That is without having taken into account any agency nurse cost or any additional cost for sickness cover. So I urge nursing providers to consider viability and whether they are going to continue providing nursing care in the coming financial year. The reason that I'm urging providers to do that is that I served notice on nursing 3 years ago because I had a viability problem. I raised with the ICB that FNC does not cover the cost of nursing provision in the marketplace. The ICB are now asking that we consider that across all nursing homes to see if it's my model or whether it is nursing homes across the county. I cannot see how a 40-bed home is going to break even, because if it was full all year at that FNC rate, if we ask FNC to go up to £250, we're still, which is likely, it's not likely to go up more than that, but we don't know because they haven't told us, nursing homes are still losing money when matching health income to health delivery. I revert back to the descriptor argument that are we describing health needs and social care needs? And as business people, are we ensuring the right stream is being paid by the right funder? It must be the case that the NHS commission health, the local authority commission social care, and we start to learn how to describe health needs and social care needs and extract our funding from the right source. That's all we have to say. I hope it's been useful, and I hope we're not misleading you.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
So earlier today, we were discussing the possibility of developing a series of case studies that people could participate in assessing against the descriptors.
I haven't told it yet. Anyway.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
What am I doing?
Your next project. We discussed it this morning.
Did you?
Oh no, I've dropped you in it.
That's okay. Off you go.
To enable providers to get on the front foot in using the descriptors, if we had the opportunity to work through some case studies and understand how they might work in practice and what the key aspects of those are going to be, to have done that in advance of this coming live, I think would be a great position to be in. And potentially, when we're able to work through some case studies, should we invite the operational teams to participate in that, so there's a shared understanding of how this is going to work ahead of it going live, and so that we avoid the he said, she said scenario that potentially in July might arise. So I thought I'll throw that out. Sorry, Eve.
It's all right.
It would be it was our hope that we could collect a group of registered managers, anonymize 3 cases, and ask the registered managers to apply residential, low, medium, or high to those cases. Do that as a set of registered managers, and then consider that with 3 social workers from the testing team. And if our pilot group agree, that should give us the start of a instruction manual or guidance manual to care home operators as to how to complete the assessments. It is the case that we've experienced, and I'm sure every provider has, an MDT that refuses a certain amount of funding or care on appeal, we send someone who presents the same case in a nuanced way with different language, and suddenly funding is agreed. So there is a communication skill to learn for all of us and how to translate the needs of our individuals. It'd be really helpful that if you are up for joining that group, we were hoping to limit the number to 20, and we were hoping that it would be registered managers directly. So the individuals that would actually be talking to social workers, if you could put your name in the chat bar, then we will create that group. If you're interested in joining that pilot, please put your name in the chat bar, and then hopefully Sarah or Michaela will pick that up. Yep. Excellent. Has anyone got any other questions or comments that they'd like to make before we close?
Just to say thank you very much. I found that really helpful. Not necessarily to give a warm fuzzy feeling, but very helpful. Thank you.
No problem. I do sincerely hope that it helps.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you, Shreyan. Thank you very much. A lot of work.
No problems. Please do thank my team. It's definitely not me. As I said, I'm just the mouthpiece. They do all the hard work.
No, it's a joint effort. You presented that really well.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.